Hello, welcome to the Premier League show. We're an AFC Bournemouth fan channel, but we like to talk about the Premier League as well. My name's Sam.
My name's Tom.
Before we begin, we'll take a look at last weekend's results. Some big games in there, not least that huge result for Arsenal against Manchester City. Some interesting scorelines. Liverpool dropping points as they look to keep up pace with the pace setters that are Spurs and Arsenal.
Yes.
In that order, only on goal difference, but there's the league table. Look at that. I always like a league table where it's not one team flying away with it. I know we're only 8 games in, however, we want it to be as competitive as long as possible. Not down the bottom end though, not down the bottom end. Bournemouth need to be above it. With that in mind, each Premier League team start 8 games in. We're going to sum it up in 5 words. We're doing it in alphabetical order, and we'll start off with Arsenal.
Arsenal, right. I've gone with it may be their time.
Do you reckon so?
It could be. I think that was a massive statement against City. And listen, Rodri being missing is massive for him, obviously still De Bruyne. But Arsenal done that without Saka. Yeah. You'd argue that's their best player. I think you could make a case for Rice now, obviously. But I think it was the manner of that victory. I don't think I thought if Arsenal were going to win the game, they would blow them away and start fast and get an early goal. But they didn't. But they managed the game well. And they restricted City to near enough nothing.
Yeah.
Haaland was non-existent, and you don't look at an Arsenal side for God knows how long and think they can be defensively sound, keep a clean sheet against City, and then nick a goal at the end. So that was impressive. So yeah, obviously still a long way to go, mate. But yeah, they're a lot closer, I think, than maybe you realise. And yeah, we'll come on to City, but it may be their time. We'll see how they juggle Europe and all that stuff, and all that will come into play. But at the moment, I think they'll be happy.
Aston Villa next. Emery's influence still reaps rewards. He did so well for them for the end of last season, and then this season they've hit the ground running. Some standout results will include winning at Chelsea, who at that time were just starting to change their fortunes, but then that 6-1 drubbing, not 2-0, not 3-0, not 4-0, 6-1 over Brighton. Maybe disappointed to drop points at Molineux last time around. However, that guy, mate, honestly, and they'll be doing all right in Europe. Whilst of course it was a last-minute goal that got them the win, I think they'll only improve, and they're looking good.
Yeah, and I think, it's disappointing on paper to drop points in their last game, but equally you'd go, they put a lot into that cup game in Europe to make sure they got the win. And, they could have easily had a hangover after that, but they still managed to go on the road and pick up a point and could have won the game. So they're in a good place, mate. They've got a top coach. I think everyone knows it. And, and you've got Ollie Watkins up front, banging in goals, back in the England squad. So, it's exciting times for Villa. I think they'll be going for that Europe. They'll certainly be going. They can win that. They'll be one of the favourites. And they could get back into it again in their league form as well. So, they're looking good, mate.
Next, AFC Bournemouth.
Oh, we've got to do Bournemouth.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go 2 drab at the moment. It's early days. I've gone with not ideal, but patience required. So we've spoken a lot in our own shows. Obviously, we're Bournemouth channel, Bournemouth fans. We've spoken a lot about the fact that we lost all these fixtures last season. I know that means you're relying on where you've got to go to Tottenham and win them, because that's what we did last season. But what we'll say is, of late, it's been a little bit concerning, the last couple. And obviously the Everton one stands out. But before that, there were signs against really, really good opponents. We have taken points off, got a point out of Brentford, West Ham, Chelsea. That's not easy. And at this stage, it's very much, let's see. Let's see in a month's time where we're at with it. But at the moment, patience has to be required. It isn't. We would have wanted more points.
It's fair to say the next couple of games are key.
They're massive. If you're not aware, we've got Wolves and Burnley at home back to back. So absolutely huge for us. But we've got a new manager, completely new style, new philosophy, new players out injured, horrible fixtures. It'd be mad not to be a little bit patient. So that's what I'm going with for us, for Bournemouth.
Brentford, lack of cover proving costly.
That's fair.
And it has. Ever since we played them at the Brentford Community Stadium, they scored a last-minute equaliser after one of our players slipped. Since then, they haven't won a game. I mean, we can talk about winning games or lack of. However, they dropped points at home to Everton, which, I mean, to be fair, Everton were very, very good. But then drawing at Forest, it was a close one at Old Trafford. But then, how can you gauge yourself against a Man United side that are absolutely all over the place?
And you feel like the way United are at the moment, 1-0 down, if it's easy to say, but if you had that Tony, if you had that, could you have got that second goal and killed the game off when United were leaving gaps? Would Brentford have done that? Maybe.
For the first time, they're looking over their shoulders, really.
A little bit, yeah. And I think Brentford fans would know, this was always going to be the question marks that if they did start looking over their shoulder, everyone's going to say about the Tony factor. And I think it is playing a part. I do still think they'll be okay. I think they've got enough about them. And whether he's likeable or not, I think Thomas Frank's a decent coach. And they still look like they've got enough. But yeah, at the moment, they'll be looking at that squad depth and the lack of cover and positions. They've lost, I think it might have been against us or the game after, they lost Henry, the full-back, for probably the season. So then you start dipping into the squad a bit more, and we've had that ourselves, and then you start worrying a little bit. So January might be key for them, but I still think they'll have enough, mate.
Brighton and Hove Albion, Tom?
Yeah, Brighton I've gone with. They're still rather blooming good.
Oh, and I see what you did there. Is that a Tony Bloom joke out there?
Maybe. But no, they are good, aren't they? They're still good. There was a few little, you briefly mentioned the Villa one, which was a real surprise. And then you start going, oh, hang on a minute. Maybe Europe and that, maybe that's causing them a few issues. And then they bounce back, don't they, quite quickly. A really good point against Liverpool, where they played well in that game as well. And that's, we all know Liverpool is still a bloody good side. So Brighton still look good. Brighton will still be fighting for them European places. I still think they'll find their feet in Europe as well, because they haven't been brilliant. But I do still think they'll go to the latter stages of that. They'll be up there in the league fighting for them top 8 positions, in my opinion. And again, losing key players, finding players out of nowhere. I mean, at the moment, I'm looking at a Dingra going, where the hell's he come from? He looks bloody good. So, yeah, I still think with the Zerbi and with the type of football they play, and I think they're in for another good season. And it's really exciting times for Brighton, mate.
Next, Burnley, and I've gone for a difficult start, promising, but realistic.
Yeah.
And when I say realistic, because I think a lot of Burnley fans thought that their season would be a continuation of their dominance in the Championship, but they realised that the Premier League is a different kettle of fish. But you've got to be realistic, and look, have been looking over their shoulders, but they got a really important win away at Luton that they fully deserved.
Yeah,
they did, however, fall apart against Chelsea.
They did a bit, especially with the way they started the game, and I think there are signs of when we first went into the Premier League, where we absolutely smashed it in the Championship, playing really exciting football. So you want to continue with that. And when you continue with that, sometimes you're going to get caught a lot, and they do get caught. And if you don't finish your dinner, you're going to lose football matches. But really, if you actually look at the fixtures,
mate, it's been difficult. Manchester City, Aston Villa, Spurs,
Newcastle,
United.
I would actually say they had one winnable game and they won it. And then one game you'd think, they could nick something at Forest, and they did. So I think they're similar to ourselves. Maybe we'll see. We'll have to judge that. But I think they're still happy with obviously Company and with some of they've got some really exciting players that we don't know too much about yet. So I still think they might be okay, but as I say, remains to be seen on Burnley at the moment.
Chelsea. What about Chelsea?
Yeah, Chelsea's weird, because I think a few weeks ago we'd be going absolute state of it. I've gone with chaotic, but slowly moving forward.
And they have been moving forward in recent weeks.
Yes, I think that, and it shows it from the results itself, but also just performance levels and the way they're playing. You kind of see. I always felt that it was all a bit messy, but Poch is a good coach, and he'll get them all right. And I still think they'll be fighting for them European places, no doubt, mate. They've still got quality players. Weirdly, that you still think they need a few players in certain positions, which is mad, considering how much money they've spent. Some key injuries, obviously, but yeah, they're going in the right direction. I think that Burnley one, the most recent one, was really showed that, because when we played them, obviously we drew 0-0, and you could see signs, but you thought they ain't putting the ball in the net. So to get 4 away from home, I think was a big statement from them, and I think they'll slowly start moving forward now.
Crystal Palace, decent, but need players back. Yeah. They're 9th in the table. I tell you what, and they have had a good start. I mean, they got the win over Sheffield United. They ran Arsenal close. They picked up a draw at Brentford, which is respectable. Beat Wolves 3-2. Should have probably been more flattering. 3-1 loss at Aston Villa is not anything to be shameful about. And then drawing against Fulham, maybe they'll look at that and think we should have got a result. But then Manchester United, getting a result there was good. Manchester United are shaky, but you know what? It's easy to become unpicked at Old Trafford, even if you're playing crap, because Man United, every so often they can turn on the style. They'll be disappointed with their last draw against Nottingham Forest, but they are missing some key players that they really do need back.
They are, one of them being a player that we're still missing in Jefferson Lerma. Also got to remember the fact they lost their talisman in Wilfred Zaha. At least they're still out. So yeah, it's It's a difficult one for Palace because I remember that Wolves game which you alluded to and thinking, they showed that near the latter stage of the game, they got the 3 goals. And then since then, a couple of 0-0 draws in there, and you're starting to think again, which is what's always been the case with Palace, that do they score enough? I think Hodgson gets your team organised and you can keep clean sheets, which is going to be, in my opinion, enough for them to be absolutely fine. But yeah, I think Hodgson, they're not strengthening loads, there's not loads of recruitment, he's still showing he's good enough at the top level. So I think they'll be okay, but it's 9th is not that bad. What I will say is if you look at the fixtures compared to other teams, I think they haven't been the worst fixtures. No. So we'll see on Palace, but I do think they'll be mid-table absolutely fine.
Okay, what about Everton?
Everton, interesting. Well, I've gone with feels stagnant, but definite progress. So it feels the same. It feels like typical Everton. They're near the bottom again, and they'll probably just be all right. But actually, if you look at the games, they should have more points. They should have more points. I thought they should have got some against Wolves, which I don't know how they lost that game. I think it was Fulham on the opening day. They should have got some in. I think at Sheffield United, they could have easily won that game. Luton, I don't know how they lost that game. So, and then they showed they beat us very, very comfortably. They won at Brentford impressively as well. And I think they'll be safer than people realise. I do think a few of the additions now are starting to show bits. Always going to go back to Calvert-Lewin staying fit, but I think little bits. I think Branthwaite at the backs helped them. Dykes knows what he's doing, and I think we've seen really recently that at home, if they can play like that, they'll get some points. And I think they're one of the teams that actually should have more points than they've got. So even though it looks, as I say, like same old Everton, I think there's a bit of progress there. I really do, and I think Everton will be fine.
Next, Fulham. I've gone for not too bad. Missing Mitro. Yeah. It's been frustrating in places for Fulham, and then it's been rewarding in others. I mean, they've had like 3-0 batterings at home by teams like Brentford, but then securing a draw at the Emirates. Of course, getting pumped by Manchester City, fair enough. But I've noticed in all the games they play, apart from the last match they had against Sheffield United, it's all been relatively tight. And goals is not really their thing this season, so they certainly do miss Mitro and need a replacement that's... I mean, they've got some decent players, attacking players, but not a main talisman, I suppose.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right there. I think I look at them and I kind of think they're winning the games that you think they'll win, which is massive. So they beat Everton, they beat Luton, they beat Sheffield United.
I mean, that's all you can ask, though.
That's all you can ask when they're playing. But last season they were picking up. I know they got that point at Arsenal, which was big, by the way. But I watched them. I think because it was the Monday Night Football. Obviously, I watched them against Chelsea, and I just looked at that front line and thought Willian's still a good player. Don't get me wrong, but obviously aging. Raul Jimenez, we all know he's not the same player since the injury at Wolves. And then Harry Wilson was off that right side, who we've had him before. I never really felt he was a starter in the Premier League. And you look at that front three and go, that should be a team that's scrapping. Yeah. But they still seem okay. I think they're still pretty solid. They're going to be all right. Kind of as I expect, to be honest, mate. So, yeah, it's kind of not really exciting and really magical like they had last season. But you're going to miss a player like Mitrovic, and I think that's showing at the moment, mate.
Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool, I've gone with steadily finding their identity again. I think you start the season, you think, what's going to happen here? With losing their whole midfield and having to replace them. But I think quite quickly... they're showing that actually they're going to be a good side, and I think everyone's talking. I know Spurs that we'll get onto have had a really good start, but I think most people are going into City and Arsenal. I think Liverpool will try and knock on the door. I really do. I think the fact they're not in the Champions League will help them because they can rotate a little bit in Europe and still be okay. They obviously had the debacle at Tottenham with the goal that should have stood.
Well, I was about to say, are they a momentum side? Because that could have knocked them, that could have knocked, and obviously the following game they dropped points at the Amex.
Yeah, they did. It's still, I think we need to start remembering that going to the Amex and getting something ain't that bad. I think a lot of teams would take a point there.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I just feel like they look back to what I expect the Jurgen Klopp team to look like. I think Szoboszlai, sorry if I pronounce it wrong, I think he looks like a hell of a player. Great signing. I think Luis Diaz, Nunes, them sort of players, I think they will start adding more goals and find their feet. You've got to remember, they've had a few knocks and Trent's been out, etc. So I still think they'll be, at the moment, I have them comfortably in third and doing well in the Europa League. So, and I think that's decent for Liverpool. I think they're slowly getting there, mate. There'll be a few bumps, but that's a whole new midfield. And I think they're starting to look back to what they were.
Luton Town, spirited start, perhaps slightly frustrated. They're above that dotted line, which I think many Luton fans will have absolutely taken after the 8 games. There are frustrations in the winnable games, I suppose, when you're playing Burnley at home, when you're playing Wolves at home, when you're away at maybe Fulham. You want them to put in more of a shift against West Ham. But then your frustration can come in, I suppose, a number of ways. When they played Spurs, Spurs went down to 10 men. Spurs dominated that first half, and then Luton ended up scoring, although it was disallowed. But then Spurs just slightly turned it on a little bit. But it's those games against Burnley. Even in the West Ham loss, actually, at home.
Yeah, and even
that was
in
a dodgy last-minute goal.
Even in that Wolves one, Wolves were with 10 men. And they drew that game. I think what I would say is they started the season with, obviously they got humped by Brighton in the end, and then at Chelsea, and you're thinking, oh God. And there was all that stuff about whipping boys, which I never felt they'd be whipping boys. But what they have done is since then, they haven't conceded many goals. So they've obviously managed to tighten up a little bit, which I think is important. My worry for Luton, I mean, it's not much of a worry, because obviously being Bournemouth fans, we don't particularly want them to do well, so we'll probably be fighting with them. But what was my concern for them is goals. I don't see them, they're playing against 10 men in a couple of games at home. So Tottenham are a great side, and Wolves, and they don't look like they can score many, and they're missing big chances, and that's going to be difficult. We've seen it ourselves, and you've got to take your chances in their moments. And I'm not sure if they've got someone that's going to get them enough goals. So I do think they'll be scrapping. But at the moment, they'll probably take where they are, and there has been slight improvements from the start of the season. So it remains to be seen with Luton, but I would be surprised if they had enough.
Manchester City then, mate.
Yeah, Manchester City I've gone with, still classy, but slight hangover. And what
hangover
I mean
from
the treble. And don't get me wrong, I think we've alluded to it, but when we spoke about Arsenal's win against them, and they're missing, Rodri's going to be back, and they're missing De Bruyne obviously, and Stones has been out as well, and they're big players. But you can't talk too much about players missing when the squad they've got. I think Doku looks like a good addition as well. But what we'll say is, you win the treble, you put everything to win that treble. There's going to be a slight hangover of trying to get back up again.
And also, the answer is obvious to what I'm about to say, but where can you go that's beyond the treble? I know, the quadruple.
Yes.
However,
They can't. They're out.
Yeah,
They're out for the
but then not many teams would ever get that.
No, exactly. It's a difficult one.
What can you do?
Would you still put them favourites? I probably would. I still think they're the best team in the league.
They're still up there. They're still up there. They have lost 2, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, that last match against Arsenal, that was that was an interesting game, because they sort of they did what they do over the course of a season in the course of a 90-minute game, albeit they didn't get over the line. They sort of started off slow. Arsenal started off the better side. Then they started to turn the screw. But then Arsenal then got back into the game the later it goes, and then obviously that strike from Martinelli.
Yes, it's a weird one, because I don't know if it only remains to be seen whether that was brilliant from Arsenal or poor from City, because in previous seasons, the way that game was going, you're going, Haaland's going to win this 1-0. They're going to win this game 1-0. Haaland's going to score in a minute. But this time, obviously it went the other way, and you go, is that because something's changed with Arsenal and they're a different beast, or a City not quite to that level?
Yeah.
We'll see. I still think they're a bloody unbelievable side, and they'll probably win the league, if I'm honest. But there may be a slight hangover there, and we'll see if the return of Rodri will make that much of a difference, because I do think the way they play, he is very key to that. So I still expect them to win it.
Manchester United, woeful yet grinding out results.
Yeah.
Kind of grinding out. This is difficult. I think this one is very difficult to sum up in 5 words, really, because they've been all over the place. You're looking at some of the games, like 1-0 over Wolves. We know how they won that. It was a tight game that Wolves absolutely dominated. 3-2 against Nottingham Forest. And obviously we're talking about the games where they played at home against Brighton.
Yeah.
Capitulated. Palace capitulated. Scraped past Burnley. I mean, even in their last match against Brentford, it took 2 Scott McTominay goals in the Fergie time to actually get a result. Ten Hag, we've said it throughout the season that it's like he's hanging in there. I suppose in some ways you could say, they've got a bit of spirit to be getting those results, but some of the other results have been absolutely diabolical. It's not the standards that he wants.
No, it's weird. I just think that they're getting away with certain bits because of the talent they've got. I mean, they've got absolute quality. I remember watching the Burnley game, and Burnley were miles better than Man United in the general play, but it's a ball over the top, and I think Bruno Fernandes scores a volley, and you just go, well, Burnley haven't got a Bruno Fernandes. And then the Brentford game, to be fair, it was McTominay, who's not known to be, he's come through the ranks and stuff, but Looking at all them fixtures, I don't think they've really deserved to win any.
No.
I honestly don't. But, as you say, they have got some results in there. So it's not ideal for them. They haven't been good. They look like, they've started awful in the Champions League as well. So yeah, it doesn't look great for them. I don't really know where they think realistically they can finish. Can they get into Europe? Probably. Will they? I'm not so sure. See what happens with them, mate. But yeah, it hasn't been great.
Newcastle United.
I've gone with far more positives than negatives, I think.
Okay.
I think you've got to put into the equation Europe.
You're making it sound like it's been quite a mixed bag by saying that.
It has points-wise.
Yeah, it has.
But I think what you've got to realise is, when they were on that bad little mini run where they lost 3 on the bounce, it was to Man City, Liverpool and Brighton.
Yeah.
And before that, they'd spanked Villa, who looked brilliant. And obviously they got the 8-0, which was very impressive. I think West Ham won lately. I think they were leaning in that game, would have felt they could have seen that one out. But that was off the back of battering Paris Saint-Germain, by the way. And they've obviously gone to Milan and got a point as well. They'll be scrapping again to try and get into the Champions League again. I think they'll probably take any European slot if they can do well in Europe. And I think you look at them fixtures, they're still in 8th.
Yes.
I think there's more positives than negatives, in my opinion. I think there's certain bits with a few injuries again, with Botman, with Callum Wilson, who's just coming back. A few little injuries where you think, is the squad going to be able to compete with both them competitions? We'll see if it can. But at the moment, I think Newcastle are in a decent place and a place they would take.
Next, Nottingham Forest. And I've gone for encouraged by signs of progress.
Yeah, I think they look good.
And I think there is progress. Apart from the game against Manchester City, they've only been beaten by a single goal all season. So Arsenal 2-1. Sheffield United, they won 2-1 obviously, but when they were beaten at Manchester United, that was 3-2. They obviously got that incredible result at Chelsea, but each and every time there's only ever been a goal in it, never more than that. So they're always in games,
always
which I think must be really encouraging for them. But I think maybe there could be some frustrations with Brentford, where they were poor at that point in time, still maybe are only getting a draw there, home against Burnley. They want to be turning more of those draws into wins. However, that said, there is progress because they're looking so much more resilient within games. And you know what? We know that Man City went down to 10 men, but they gave them a good go as well.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things. I think Forest last season felt a bit messy, didn't it? And now I just feel like they're a little bit more settled. And credit to them, by the way, in sticking with Cooper. All that mess, it would have been easy to get rid of him last season. They didn't. And the top and bottom of it is, I thought they'd be in and amongst it again. Now I don't think they'll be in a relegation scrap at all. No. At any point in the season. I think they'll be looking up rather than down. I think they look good. I think they've got some good players. So Forest, as you say, mate, definite progress for me.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you gone for then in terms of the Blades? Sheffield United?
Yeah, I've gone with small signs despite unsurprisingly struggling. So I didn't want to go in and just go, they're absolutely useless, because...
What are the small signs then?
The small signs are, there were a few... you've got to put in, I know, let's get out of the way that they lost 8-0 at home. That's pretty hideous. Yeah. They've lost the last couple and they've never really looked like they're going to get anything out of the games. Yeah. But what I will say is they played against Man City and nearly got something. Yeah. They were very close. They played against Tottenham, who were top of the league, and nearly got something. So they're not mugs, because them 2 games, weirdly showing against some of the big boys in them 2 that they can frustrate and they can score against, away at Tottenham and against Man City. I think when I say small signs, I think some of the players that you'd expect them to take a little bit of time. So I'm thinking of Hamer, who they brought in from Coventry. I'm thinking of Archer. I think they're 2 players that look good, and I don't think there's going to be a team that are going to be whipping boys. I think they'll scrap, and I think they'll get a few results that will surprise people. I think will Hackingbottom stay in a job? I'm not sure, but I think there's a few bits there that make me think they'll be competitive. Do I think they'll stay up? No, I don't. I don't now. I don't think they've got quite enough quality, but I think there's a few bits in there that they'll be grabbing hold to, thinking, we might get a few results here and there. I think the problem is at the moment is where they are in the league, and everyone remembers the 8-0. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see with Sheffield United, but I would be surprised if they stayed up.
Tottenham Hotspur. Ange Ball, better than they thought. Ooh. They always thought it was going to be an exciting brand of football, but the way that it's produced results consistently for them, fair play to them. Spurs have had an absolutely superb start to the season. They're unbeaten, and they've been giving some big teams some lessons. I mean, the Liverpool game, we know what happened in that, but drawing at the Emirates, I think, was absolutely huge for them. They've also faced the mighty AFC Bournemouth. Oh no, that's us, isn't it? We're not allowed to talk about them too much. But 2-0 over Manchester United. They've just been really steady and just really, really exciting. Obviously, when a manager brings that brand of football, you always think that they might have a few defensive lapses with the way they just maraud forward and might look susceptible. But some of the signings that they've made, like Van der Ven, etc., they've got a really, really good structure and a good spine throughout the whole side. And I think their squad depth is maybe questionable, so when a few of their star players like Maddison might be out, can they replace him? But they're looking good and they're top of the league.
They are, mate, and I agree with what you said. I always felt that Spurs fans, with the fact that they've had Mourinho, Conte, and it's all quite negative and pragmatic football, I always thought they'd get behind Ange because of the way he plays. But exactly what you said, I thought they might be a little bit open. So it didn't surprise me that they went to the Emirates and scored 2, but I thought they might concede 4, for example. I always felt they'd be a bit more open. I know when we were playing them, obviously you try and be positive. And I thought, they'll get a couple of goals, but I think they'll give us chances. But they didn't really. And I think a big part of that is someone you mentioned. I think Van der Ven's been impressive. I think the goalkeeper, Basuma, feels like a new signing.
Wow, yeah.
So it's meant that even though they are open, they've got some players in certain roles that are getting them out of trouble. Do I think they'll win the league? No. And I don't think Tottenham fans really do. I know, got to get behind it and enjoy it, and Could they?
They could.
No, they can't win the league. They can't. They could. But what I would say is they're just going to enjoy it. They're really going to enjoy it. And, you said about the squad, no Europe would help them. And now what's weird is I think before the start of the season, you'll go, I think it'd be exciting, they might improve. Now you're going, you'd be surprised to say they wouldn't be top 4. And that's more impressive than it sounds now from where they were at the start. So, Tottenham have been a joy to watch, haven't they?
I think it's going to be similar to Newcastle, whereby the expectations are just going to go up the more the season goes on. Well, so I'm really interested to see how that unfolds.
Forget they lost Harry Kane, by the way.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Harry who? Next, West Ham United. What do you think?
I've gone impressive thanks to smart recruitment because they lost their best player. They lost their best player in Declan Rice. They're always going to get a lot of money for him. And you always thought, right, how are they going to use that? Because it's massive and everyone says you get loads of money and you just replace them easily. James Ward-Prowse was very smart. Very, very smart. I think Alvarez was smart. So you've got 2 players in there for Declan Rice that have, they don't look any worse, do they? And I think Kudus, who you're just starting to see what he can bring to the table, I think he's a really talented player as well. So, I think the recruitment's been smart. I think sticking with Moyes, despite a lot of people going, can he take them forward, I think was smart again.
The 2 teams he's lost to, Liverpool and Man City. And he's, they drew at Newcastle as well. So, I mean, some of those results,
winning at Brighton, I think they look good, mate. I really do. I thought, could they look over their shoulders? There's another team that I think, they'll be absolutely fine and still in Europe as well. Again, a few injuries might cause them problems. I think they're going to be relying on goals from wide areas. I mentioned Kudus. I think Bowen again stepping up because they haven't got that focal point maybe. But
where do you reckon they should be finishing? Top 10?
Yeah, I think they'll still be looking for that. I think, and at the moment, I would back them for that. So I think they've got to be happy at the moment, and going to that stages in Europe again will be on the agenda for them. So, but at the moment they're in the European places again. I didn't expect that. So. Fair play to Moyes and to West Ham, and they're doing well again, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Wolverhampton Wanderers. Are you going to sing his name?
Gary O'Neill. Fair play to him. Doing all right.
Pleasant start. Gary raising eyebrows. Maybe. It's fair to say that when his name was announced as Bournemouth manager, we were all a bit confused, didn't have any experience, but he did what he had to do with us. Wolves fans were equally... After the loss of Julian Lopetegui, they were raising their eyebrows, maybe, not in a good way, but now they are in a good way thinking, has he got it? And look, he's a very pragmatic manager, we know that, a very purposeful brand of football he plays, and it gets results in the games that maybe they don't expect to get results in. Exhibit A, Manchester City at home. Who knew they would get a result there? But then they also have games, when they played Crystal Palace, they lost 3-2, they were woeful in that. Brighton, they capitulated against at home. But overall, we look at their results this season.
Unlucky at Old Trafford.
It's not actually been too bad. And it's just a draw this weekend against their local rivals. I think he's doing a good job there. But Should you stay at Bournemouth? That's the big question, right?
Not for me personally.
Okay.
But no, I think the City. If you take the City result out, I would go kind of what I expected. I think people are forgetting that Wolves have got some blooming good players. To be honest, I think everyone's talking about Wolves being in there at the bottom, and I'm thinking, well, they have got some good players.
Yeah.
So I think we need to put that into context. But you can't take out the City result because it's there, and that was really, really impressive and shows what they can do. But in the other games, it's kind of all the games have gone as I kind of anticipated, barring that one. Having said that, the draw at Villa was a good one from them. And I think they'll be scrapping, and they'll probably have enough. And I think that's kind of what I expected. Will he see out the season? I'm still not sure. Personally, because I think the brand of football is always going to mean there's going to be question marks because fans will start thinking about. I remember the Palace one in particular. I remember watching it and they were in control, and then it felt like they just gave it to Palace, which was concerning. But yeah, I think they'll be relatively happy.
I think the reliance on certain players.
Yes.
I mean, if Neto ever gets injured, for instance, I would be interested to see whether they could still be as.
Yeah.
I mean, down that right flank, he's world class.
He is brilliant.
So,
but they look organised. What I will say for O'Neill is they look organised defensively at the moment. He's got them in a decent shape there, and I think people like Dawson and Kilman are still very reliable, and the goalkeeper as well. So yeah, at the moment you still say he's doing absolutely fine, and Wolves should be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think
let's see.
Previously they used to set their sights on like challenging for European football. I think now most fans have actually kind of pulled it back a bit. Let's just become an established Premier League side, and Gary O'Neill might be the key to that. You never know, and look, credit to him if he does it. There we go. Those are all 20 Premier League teams. The first 8 games summed up in 5 words. Do you agree? No? You don't? Okay, use the comments below. Put whatever you think down in the comments. Let us know what team you support. Put your comments in there and we will read them. Hopefully, for Bournemouth, we'll improve on our 3 points.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll re-look at this at a certain point when it feels right to do so, and hopefully we're changing a few in there from a Bournemouth perspective, mate. I'm just glad you allowed us to do it in alphabetical order and not in the league table, to be honest.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. Thanks for watching, really appreciate it. Hit the like button, subscribe. There'll be a video coming your very soon. I'm very sure. Should we stop this?
Yeah.
Up the cherries, up the Premier League.
Aye.
Can't get my words out today.
You nearly made it.